Oggi abbiamo l'opportunità di incontrare uno dei creativi tra i più importanti sulla scena internazionale. Parliamo di Jaime Mandelbaum, brasiliano nato a San Paolo, ma ormai da 20 anni che gira sul continente europeo. Si trova a capo della creatività di VML, EMEA, quindi sotto di lui sono 3 continenti che gestisce precedentemente ricopriva lo stesso incarico per VML YNR. Ha lavorato per tantissimi clienti, Adidas, Absolut Vodka, BMW, Chanel, Coca-Cola, Danone, Lavazza, ING, non sto a elencarli tutti, Nike mi pare, e quindi ha un'esperienza molto approfondita su quello che è la creatività e ovviamente sta vivendo come tutte le persone della nostra industria questo momento di grande evoluzione tecnologica e di transizione. Allora, parleremo quindi di creatività, intelligenza artificiale e tanto altro ancora. La prima domanda che voglio rivolgere è perché è qui in Italia. La farò ovviamente in italiano, lui le conosce già, ovviamente in inglese, risponderà in inglese. Quindi Jaime, benvenuto in Italia e spiegaci perché sei qui.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. And I think the main reason for me being here is that I don't really believe in kind of, I think you have a lot of regional creatives that are, I don't know, sitting in London or kind of running things from, an ivory tower per se, or from running a region from remote control. So I like being in the country, speaking to the people. So, Italy being one of the most important markets for us in EMEA. And of course, I love every time seeing Simona and the team here. We have a fantastic creative crew here in Italy. So I just came down to see how everyone's doing and basically just spend some time with the team.
Yes, e come CEO di VML EMEA tu hai la supervisione e come hai appena detto ti piace mettere anche le mani in pasta, conoscere le persone di 3 continenti, quindi Europa, Medio Oriente e Africa. Ci sono delle differenze sostanziali nell'approccio alla creatività?
You don't even have to go to actually the different continents to see the difference in the creativity. Even within, it's everybody, when we have these meetings, when we have the global meetings and you have the people running the different regions, all the guys that run LATAM and the guys that run North America, they always come to me and they're like, Jamie, you have the hardest one. And usually I always answer, I don't have the hardest one, I have the most interesting one, which is a very different, it's a very different thing. Because you do have, you have very different voices, heritage, like think about, I don't know, Italy with all the history of the arts and design and everything that the heritage that exists here with fashion, with, the creativity in Italy, has, it's a massive part of not just culture, but the economy of the country. So you have things where creativity plays a role. Then you go to other places like, I know, Central Eastern Europe, where you have a massive history on things with literature, with cinema, and so you have very different voices. You go to Turkey, the work is extremely different. Right? Of course, you go to South Africa, or you go to Egypt, all of those places have a different voice, a different understanding on advertising. Advertising has flourished at a different time in those places. So it's incredible to see the difference and how it actually manifests in each of the different countries.
Puoi dirci qual è la peculiarità della creatività italiana?
I think Italy, I would still love to see. I think there was a time in the past where Italy did some famous kind of global work. I think the beauty of creativity in Italy, you have, as I was saying earlier, you have creativity is a massive part, not just of your culture, but also the economy of Italy with the things that it exports. So I think right now, there's a lot of work in Italy which is inwards, so meaning, work that doesn't necessarily go over the borders of Italy in terms of creative kind of you know, people often tell you kind of like, oh, you know, you won't understand this. Doesn't translate. It's beautiful. There are things like, of course, which are very peculiar and very kind of local to a single market. Things that people in the street repeat and say, have you seen this? And of course, every market needs this. But I would still love to see coming out of Italy. I think Italy finding a little bit more of its own voice, in the sense of it's a country where you have a lot of family-owned companies with founders or families of founders, and those companies, of course, were extremely creative in terms of developing products and things like that. And you'd see, if you see in the past, some of the best work that was done, it was always when an agency and a founder or somebody that came up with a product actually got together, and that's when like beauty like kind of flourished. I would love to see more of that coming out of Italy. I think there's a braveness on the side of product creation, on the thinking of going to market with certain things. I would love to see that bravery translating as well into the communication and the creativity that when they partner with agencies. I think there's a little bit of room for growth on creativity there in Italy.
Un'altra domanda, è stato difficile gestire il merging tra Wunderman e VML da un punto di vista creativo?
I think we're very complementary on a lot of things. What's been really interesting of the merger is like some of the different skill sets that were added. I think hard in terms of difficile is not necessarily I think it's more of, there's certain things that take time, and I think it will take a little bit of time for some of the creatives or the different parts of the company to understand all the new tools that are available to them. But when I say time, it's a matter of like months of understanding and connecting things. They're okay, like now actually I have access to this all new capability of things that we didn't really have before. So when you add all of that, I think again, magic kind of happens. So I think, yeah, of course there's people, but you know, as a creative, you tend to focus on the work, not necessarily on the politics. So I think it's going pretty well.
Adesso parliamo di creatività. In senso generale, poi scenderemo nel particolare. Qual è il tuo punto di vista, il tuo approccio alla creatività?
So I think creativity has and always has been in our field applied creativity. We're not artists, so we're not necessarily creating things without a purpose. Like so what we create has one very simple thing that creativity has always been when it's applied creativity, which is what we do, and it's to stand out. Make whatever it is, if it's a product, a service, or whatever it is, stand out from whatever its competitors or whoever it is that it's against, and make people notice that brand, have some kind of affinity towards that brand, and basically want to either subscribe to that service or consume that product or understand something that they didn't really know before. And I think creativity, when it's again applied creativity, I believe in leaving people with something they didn't necessarily have before. Now that might be a piece of knowledge, now that might be a laughter that they didn't really have until that moment. That might be a little bit of emotion or whatever it is. So I believe we always should try to leave people with something that they didn't have when they went in. When they went in contact with whatever it is that we're doing, whether that's something online or a piece of outdoor or a brand experience in a point of sale or a piece of film. So whatever it is, leave people with something that they didn't have before.
Allora, il Festival di Cannes alle porte ovviamente consacrerà la migliore creatività, ma vogliamo chiedere a Jaime se effettivamente Cannes rispecchia il concetto di creatività così come lo ha espresso. E ricordiamo anche che Jaime è stato presidente di giuria, anche nonché giurato e nonché pluripremiato a Cannes con le sue campagne.
I think so. The only thing is you always, maybe it over-indexes on certain things of what I was saying earlier. Maybe you could see a mix. What I mean by that is, I think, yes, you see work at Cannes that leaves you with something, it's like impactful, and you have things that, you know, sometimes are quite like, oh my God, you know, it's like, are you changing a whole, like, I don't know, setup of a whole village or helping a certain community with something for a huge brand. So you do have work with impact, and that leaves people with something, some kind of feeling. I think maybe over the years it has over-indexed on, and it's not a reflection on the festival. Maybe it's a reflection on the general state of things of our world. Is that there's not enough things, I think, these days that make us laugh. It's very you kind of miss. So it's like when you sit in the jury, which I've been privileged enough a few times to sit in the jury again, like something that comes up and it makes you laugh, it kind of like almost, you know, lights that whole moment, because there's so many things that are like so heavy, like that, you know, it's like there's a lot of heaviness around, and work that's very serious and like really. So I think we need a little bit more of lightness back in our industry. I think that's missing.
Okay. Non possiamo parlare di creatività senza parlare adesso di intelligenza artificiale generativa. Voglio farti una domanda su due aspetti che l'intelligenza artificiale considera, ossia uno è l'impatto sulla creatività, ossia come l'intelligenza artificiale può aiutare o sostituire i creativi, e secondo appunto come impatta sull'organizzazione stessa dell'agenzia. Toglierà posti di lavoro, ne creerà degli altri, insomma, qual è la tua idea?
So I think like any tool, which first I need to label it as something, so let's label AI as a tool, which I think it's an incredible tool, very much like the computer. Let's say, so I don't know, before, if you take an ad agency of like the past, you know, you had people doing layouts and cutting out the typography and you know, taking the pictures and putting them on the page and having, you know, it's like it took hours, and it was hours.
Days.
Yes, exactly, days, like to get one thing, like so.
But beyond this work, there were also people, no? That maybe.
Yeah, of course. You had a lot of people involved to get one thing. So I think, of course, AI is a tool that helps get to an end goal maybe a little bit faster. Now, how you use it and which parts of, you know, of the journey towards the end line you use it, I think is key. You see, creatives are curious by nature. Yeah, so you have very early on when generative AI came on, and you had already some versions of software open. What I started to notice was some of the best creative teams were already using it. They would come already to meetings, and suddenly you had, you know, very first reviews with creatives inside the agency, and the work was already looking more polished, and it was, so it helped them get to their vision faster. So I think what you're going to have, and I'm not saying it's just our industry goes at a pretty fast pace. I'm not advocating for it to go even faster, that clients can now suddenly go, it's like, oh my God, they can receive work even faster. What it does is I think it improves a little bit on some of the things on the part of the journey, like I was saying, to get to a layout. Yeah. The layout from the past was not necessarily more or less beautiful than a layout done today, but the time that it took to get to it and maybe the amount of people involved in it has shortened and has made the life of those people a little bit easier. Now, what nobody's really talking about AI for me is actually, and that's a broader subject, which is you have a whole generation of people that were kind of, let's say, raised by the computer and are always looking at references on Pinterest and so on and so forth, versus trained writers, trained art directors. They're like educated in understanding, you know, styles of photography, the different names of photographers, the different typography and history of it. So if you fast forward to now and you need to put in prompts, you need to know like what you actually, you know, of course people are talking about prompts and writing prompts, so there's a way of like how you write the prompts, but there's another thing. There's a whole baggage of knowledge that you need to have that has nothing to do with AI. in order for you to actually put the things and get a result that is interesting.
The right prompts.
Exactly. So it's not just the writing of the prompts, it's the knowledge that goes in that again has nothing to do with AI. It's a baggage of knowledge that you need to have from, different styles of photography, whether it's like, I don't know, Richard Avedon or typographers or whatever it is.
You must have that knowledge.
You must have that knowledge. And it's not about which you had a lot of people entering the ad industry without necessarily, I say, that baggage of knowledge, which is just putting things together in the computer because the computer made it easy to access an industry that before was harder to get in because it was a craft, right?
Yeah, ma questo significa che l'intelligenza artificiale generativa, stiamo parlando di questo, taglierà posti di lavoro all'interno delle agenzie? Come si riorganizzeranno le agenzie?
So as I said, I think some of the best teams are already embracing it. I think what it will reorganize is lower end things, which, if you go back, if you go back to how an agency used to be, there was a very limited amount of things that an agency produced in terms of outcome toward of public-facing things. What I mean by that is, if you go back, what did an agency produce? An outdoor, a print ad, a radio, and a film. It had 4 things. The setup inside the agency, you had X amount of people, and you produce those things. Now, fast forward to now, the amount of things an agency produces, it's nearly infinite with variations and iterations of those things for even a single medium. So if you take a social post, you have thousands of variations of that catered to different audiences and things. So what I think AI is going to be able to do is going to give creatives back the fact that it's almost like we were, going to, we're completely outnumbered, is what I mean. We had, tools and things, and just kind of like you still have the same plus minus the same number of creatives inside an agency producing an infinite amount of things. You cannot win. So what AI helps us to do is, I think, increase the level of certain kind of numerous tasks and things that the agency did, and increase the average and the quality of the creative work in that.
It will not cut jobs or whatever.
Look, of people, I think, some of the jobs, if I look, for example, I honestly don't know what, for example, if you take a storyboard artist, I don't really know where they've gone. Some of the things, of course, will change, and I'm sure there's gonna be other things that you find. People need to pivot, and that is just how things are. But if I rarely see nowadays a storyboard or something that is and has been done without kind of AI, because you just get to it faster. So I can present and I can get a script presented with something that looks comped up and beautiful versus something that before you had to brief someone and wait 3 days to get it back.
So, quindi in poche parole, cos'è l'innovazione per te?
Innovation for me is you take 2 things that existed and they were there, you put them together and it becomes something that nobody had actually thought about it before. That is, to me, the definition of innovation, because what we do is not invention. We're not inventing a door. The door already existed, but maybe you take a door and you put something else and it becomes a third thing. So I think, to me, innovation is just this. You take things that no one noticed, they've been lying here, and this table's been here, and you thought about, you combine this with something else and it becomes another thing.
Technology, e la tecnologia è uno strumento.
Of course.
Senti, una delle ultimissime domande. Ci troviamo nell'era post-pandemia, no? Che ha anche qui completamente rivoluzionato anche il modo di lavorare, smart working, il lavoro da remoto. Ecco, in questa epoca di post-pandemia, come anche il lavoro e le persone stanno trovando il loro equilibrio? Qual è il tuo punto di vista e come lavorate voi?
Also, I think you have, of course, the pandemic is already feels like quite ages ago, but but we have a fortunately. But as you said, the ways of working that we have now are, of course, kind of, let's say, inherited or remnants from what we went through in the pandemic. So you have, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and all these things. I think what you have is teams sometimes need, and it depends, different people work different ways. So creatives, I think, sometimes need a little bit of introspection time. What I mean by that is, okay, like, hey, is everything, and you're exposed to all the different things, but there's a time when you're actually creating where you need a little bit of introspection and you're thinking. But also, you cannot have 100% introspection, and you cannot have 100% of all the time being in a space. I think now that has enabled some people that have, the ability to just say, I need this much of this and I need that much of that. What I mean by that is you need people back in the offices, because I think there was something that was lost. I always talk about the ride to the elevator. What is the ride to the elevator? So if you go to a client, and I spoke about this with clients as well, if when we schedule a meeting with a client and it's only on Microsoft Teams, it's a completely transactional relationship where the time of the meeting starts, you go in, maybe you talk for 1 minute about the weather, and the meeting ends, and everybody's out. You don't have two very important bits, which is the ride to the elevator. The ride to the elevator in and the ride to the elevator out. And that moment, I think, is actually when you have certain conversations of things that are not necessarily important to the meeting, but sometimes are they're personal, but you give crucial bits of information. Sometimes on the way out, you presented and you spoke about the work, or a client has told you about the problem. Now on the way out, because he's gotten, all the problem out of his system, now he's going to tell you what is really important, that he didn't tell you in the meeting.
Yeah, that's right.
But on Teams, that doesn't happen. So I think we need human interaction, and we need those kind of spontaneous moments. Of course, here
also for young people.
Also for young people, and I think it's like if
absorb.
you have a lot of, and I spoke about this with Debbie Van Dieven, our global CCO. She says you have a lot of some young people now coming in and saying like, I only want to work remotely. You need to think about the fact that sometimes you bump into someone at the office, and that person is going to teach you something, and that something might change your career, and it might propel you to grow, and but if you're isolated, that's difficult.
E quindi come organizzate? Cioè, c'è un turnover in ufficio, metà, half and half?
I think different places, different. You cannot apply everything exactly. There's no standard. So you have different countries applying different things, also in the understanding. So I see here in Milan, the campus is very full. People are here, and you have because it's, of course, culturally also people need more of the interaction. The same. I'm based in Madrid, and the campus there. It's like even during COVID, you actually had some teams. They needed the interaction so much that they were going in the office because they thrived on having that creative community and the interactions that they had between themselves. So in London, you have few days a week and then few days out. Of course, it's a big city. It's also, you need to account for the time that people are taking to commute into the city. So, there's a strain there. So each country has a little bit of a different measure. Yeah.
L'ultima domanda, parliamo di una best case, no? Per esempio avete acquisito e fatto un lavoro straordinario per Coca-Cola su un livello globale. Raccontaci un po' di questa campagna.
So there's two pieces that I think we're quite proud of, a couple things. They all kind of launched fairly recently, although we're already in April going into May, and I just kind of cannot believe it's almost already May. But is one piece that we launched on the back. So we did the global campaign of Coca-Cola Christmas. The world's need more Santas, and it was like a global campaign. It's great. At the back end of that campaign, we also launched the piece, which I thought was really interesting for us and for Coca-Cola. It's something they've been trying to do more of, which is to branded entertainment pieces, and it's purely entertainment. Is short films that were launched on Amazon Prime, and it's 2 short films. If Amazon Prime here in Italy, of course, you can go and watch it. One is called Ho Ho Heist, and the other one is called The Note, and it's simple, beautiful, kind of like human stories. One a little bit more kind of poetic, silent, kind of quiet. The other one a little bit kind of following a format of like Christmas action films kind of thing. So that was something that we're pretty proud of that we've done. And then there's something that launched fairly recently, I think about a month ago, and it's an interesting one because it was a collaboration between several different offices. So you had New York, São Paulo, South Africa, and a couple other offices working on it, which is a co-creating, which is just really about embracing the different variations, if I call it this way, or the different expressions of the brand, and it's a pretty cool one. So we can send the link so you can hopefully share it.
Mostreremo ai nostri utenti appunto la campagna. Bene, allora ti ringrazio per questa lunga chiacchierata che abbiamo fatto insieme qui al campus WPP e spero di incontrarti presto sull'Acqua Rasette oppure di nuovo qua a Milano. Per ADV Express è tutto, Salvatore Sagò.